session 1 on why online groups are valuable to your church. Number 1, it's a first contact for people for your church and in your community. Think of it as a front door. People will come to experience what your church is about by first wanting to engage in community. So think about this with kind of the self-service economy that's kind of popped up with a lot of the tools we use. I think about it with Robinhood. It's an investment app. And I think about how it used to be, years ago, you would call somebody and you would talk to somebody and, get a tip and maybe get set up with an account. And that's how you would invest in the stock market. Well, now Robinhood is a popular app that's kind of popped up over the last couple of years where you don't need to talk to anybody. And the idea is that you come to experience and you want to invest by doing it yourself. You really don't want to get on the phone. You don't want to talk to somebody. You just want to do it. Think about this with your online groups. People not only just want to watch your services online as your church to see what you're about and read about what you value on your website, they actually want to experience your community. And online groups is a great way to offer a front door to your church. So think of it as a way for them to try out your church beyond just streaming, but actually getting into community. And that's going to be a big thing now and moving forward. People want to actually try it on before they actually commit to your church. Number 2, it's a way to engage people in different seasons of life. Maybe they just had a baby. Maybe they're traveling a lot. Maybe they're a new Christian. It's also a way to engage people with sickness. Maybe they are elderly and they literally can't come to your church because of certain scenarios that have drastically changed their lives. They might have a permanent or a temporary sickness. That online groups are a great way to kind of provide an entryway, kind of an on-ramp to your church. And then security. And this might not be something that your church thinks about right now, but there are people around the country, in your city, and around the world that can't come to church. The extreme examples might be they might be in a country where they can't publicly worship a God different than the government. One thing in a lot of governments you don't think about that there might be freedom of worship, but there's not freedom of conversion. And they might want to experience your church in a deep way through your online group offering by actually, getting into an online group. And that's a great way to minister to those people. Also, somebody with, some domestic issues. They might be not safe to leave their home. And you think about that even locally. That happens in the U.S. in every state, unfortunately. And it's a great way to provide a safe way for them not to disappear and have to be accountable. They can just engage in an online group. And so season, sickness, and securities are big ways to engage different types of people in your community. It's also a no excuse option. I love this. Being a small group pastor for many years, you hear all the reasons why people can't engage in groups. Well, childcare, or it doesn't work for me that night because of this and that, or I don't have a car, or I can't get here because of that. Well, you'll find out by offering online groups, it's a great safety net. It's kind of a catch-all because you can do a group from your home anytime with very limited technology. And so it's a way to go, well, if you can't come to this group, you can join an online group. And so it's kind of a catch-all. I've experienced that where it's kind of like no excuse. You can get into an online group. I know you can. And then lastly, online groups are a great way to launch more face-to-face groups. And you might not think of it that way, and we're going to dive deeper into that, kind of the strategy of that. But I have found what happens is many people will start an online group or join an online group, and what will happen is that will be a launch pad for them down the road to launch a group in person, because what you've done is you've exposed them into a very simple kind of crawl step into what groups are about. And I have many stories of online group hosts and members coming to me and wanting to talk to me, and it's like a serious talk, and they get on the phone with me or on a Zoom call, and they're like, Jay, thank you so much for what your church does with online groups. But you know what? I think we really want to stop the online group and start one in our community. And they think it's a bad thing, but I'm really excited for them. And they don't realize it, that they've matured. A lot of people with your online group kind of ministry, they'll engage because it's the only step they can take at that moment. And what you'll find is that you get to expose people to the power of small groups, and eventually they'll want to crave more. It's kind of like giving, just a little bit of taste of this. When I was in high school, I remember the first time somebody offered me a cup of coffee, and I had never tried coffee ever in my life. I think my grandpa had it a lot, and I hated it. I hated the smell of it because he always drank cold coffee, like the bad Folgers cold coffee. But you just think about it, like I had one sip of it, and over time my addiction grew. And what happens with online groups is people will engage in your ministry online and they'll want more, which will ultimately lead you to have the ability to start a lot of groups. And there's some strategy there that we'll dive into that you can actually challenge them a couple times a year to say, hey, you've been doing an online group for a season. What if you start one in person? And so it's a great first contact. Think of online groups as a front door to your church. It's a great way to engage different people in different seasons, sickness, and securities. It's a no excuse option, and it's a way to launch more face-to-face groups. And so now what I want you to do, down below this, there's a discussion area, and I want you to answer this question. I would love to see that, and I know that the team would as well, is which reason out of this, the reasons I listed, is most valuable for your church to launch online groups? Session 2, the 4 Ps of online group. The first P is programming. Your groups will either watch your video teaching or go through the teaching element for your small group programming on demand individually or real time as a group. Commonly, this is kind of talked about in small group circles as synchronized or asynchronized. The idea is that synchronized is we're watching something together or we're learning something together in a room. Asynchronized meaning we're watching it up to a certain date. And so we found with online groups, most groups do not want to get on a Zoom call and watch something for 20, 30 minutes or read something for 20 to 30 minutes. They want to jump right to discussion. And so because of technology and kind of the moment we're in right now, is you can decentralize or upload your content or provide it ahead of time where groups can actually watch it prior to the group meeting. I've noticed this even with my own small group that meets in person, a married small group that I'm part of. We got like 15 kids between all of us, and if we're going to meet, we don't want to burn 20, 30 minutes watching something on a TV because first off, kids are going to be fighting in the background. We're probably not going to be able to hear it anyways, and people are going to have to leave and miss parts of it. And so we made it a change, kind of a shift about 2 years ago where we would just say, we would send out a link and we'd go, hey, watch it here prior to meeting, and just that week, instead of watching something on Netflix or something, as a couple, we would actually watch the small group material. And because of kind of the technology and all the tools that exist, you can do this. And programming, at least how your online small groups watch the content or read the content, you can do things differently. And we found 90% of our groups want to watch things on demand individually. And when they meet, they jump right to discussion, which makes for a better online group or even generally a small group meeting time. The next P is platform. People are very opinionated with technology, okay? It's like if I say Apple's better than, Android, if you love Android, you're getting, very feisty. And so, which is okay. And what I found with online groups is don't be opinionated or a dictator with how they meet. We found what's best in our context is by recommending one platform. It's just going, you know what, Skype, or in our example, Zoom. Zoom is a really easy platform to use. So we recommend Zoom to kind of go. Again, it's probably, best to recommend a couple, but we lean into Zoom. And then if you want to meet on whatever platform you want, we do not limit that. We go, great. If you love House Party, or if you love, WhatsApp, or if you love, Facebook Messenger Room, go ahead, meet. Because ideally you're meeting with your friends. And if your friends have a preferred platform, go. I think about this, like when I text with my friends, I'm either texting them or I'm tweeting at them because those are the platforms I use with like my groups of friends. My wife meets and texts primarily on Instagram. She has like a Instagram group. You know why? Because we're different people with different, friends. And so we use different platforms. And so don't get so wrapped up on how they meet. Just encourage them to meet. And so recommend one platform. And then if they want to meet on another platform, that's great. The interesting thing is that as your ministry continues to reach more people with your online group offering, you'll find that, technology is super geographical. There's probably platforms you're not even aware of. I did a a kind of a conference a couple weeks ago to a bunch of pastors in Russia, and they were talking about these video platforms I had never heard of. But I encourage them, use whatever you want and what people feel safe on. And so platform is a big part of this. The next P is process. And what I mean by this is that allow your online groups to meet in different ways and then encourage them to change or upgrade to a better experience. So for example, if you want, you can encourage online groups to start text-based where they just text with each other. You might think that's super weird. I don't even understand that. Again, I'm not saying you have to start as a text-based. I'm talking about different people. If you're under 20, texting is very easy, and it's a way you primarily communicate. My brother, who's actually not that much younger than me, but I remember, about 3 years ago, I called him and I left a voicemail, and he texted me back and he listened to my voicemail and he said, "Why did you call me?" He's like, that could have just been a text. But even in our own age bracket, he just wants to text. And a lot of people want to interact that way. And you can have online groups that meet on Slack and different platforms like that where it can be compelling. But what you do is you don't leave them there. What you say is that, hey, you can start this way, but hey, after a month or so, you check in and you go, hey, you've been meeting on this text-based. Why don't you move to an audio type of online group? And they can jump on a phone call or a Zoom call or a Skype call, just audio based. And then from there, you say, hey, you've been meeting on an audio call. Why don't you actually upgrade to a video call? And the idea is that the more you get intimate, meaning the more you can see your face and you can kind of read different things, it leads to a better group dynamic. I don't believe a text-based online group is the best form of an online group. I believe a video call is, but allow people to start at different phases, and then you as the pastor or as the leader over the group, pastorally check in with them, encourage them to get to upgrade their experience. And then lastly, you can move them actually to face-to-face. You can actually go, hey, you've been on this video-based group for a while. What if you actually met face-to-face? One of the big ways we do this is once a year, our church does a campaign, which is just we all study the same thing on the weekend, and in our small groups, we study the same thing for usually about 6 weeks. And what I do usually with our online group hosts is I say, hey guys, I'll send a direct email. You've been part of an online group for the past year. What if just for these 6 weeks, you meet face to face? And so that can be hard with online groups because what you'll find is online groups are spread out. So usually what happens is you have to encourage online groups to actually individually, each member has to start a face-to-face group, which again for multiplication is a huge factor. And so you can actually, out of one online group, if they're all spread out, you can start 3 to 4 online face-to-face groups through a campaign strategy. But think about the process. Allow people to start at various stages. And if you don't want text, that's okay. But allow audio to move to video and video to face-to-face. And the one thing I wanted to say on this that's important is you have to think about that some people do not want to turn on their video because of insecurities or grief or security issues. So I don't want you to force feed, the need for video if you don't have to. And so what I have found is by allowing groups to at least start on audio and not turn on the video is that as they mature, they want to provide a better experience, which ultimately, again, from audio to video to face-to-face. And then the next P is places. And what I mean by this is that online groups will interact in 2 ways, and both of these places are really important to have a healthy and sustainable online group dynamic. The first place is home base, and what I mean by that is this is where the online group meets 24/7. This is where they meet when the group isn't happening. That might be in a Facebook group, it might be a text, thread, or it might be a WhatsApp, group. Again, don't be opinionated about how they meet. With their home base. Just recommend you need a home base. With my own small group here in the US, iMessenger is very popular. So we all have iPhones. And so we use an iMessage thread when we plan and talk and pray. There was just something a couple days ago I was getting some prayer about, and somebody in our group texted and said, hey, I'm praying for that, Jay, and I'm praying for this. And that's how we stay connected. Again, it's in the home base where we'll say, hey guys, by the way, we're going to meet on Tuesday at this time. And don't forget to watch the study here. And so that's where you kind of have interaction while you're not actually meeting. And then the next place is your meeting space. This is actually where you meet when you actually have your group time. And so this might be on a Zoom call, it might be Skype, Google Hangouts. There are literally hundreds of ways you can do video meetings. We really prefer Zoom. That's something that I've been using for at least 5 years. It's a very easy experience to kind of get started on there. One of the things that I love about Zoom, it's one-click access. You don't need to have an account. You can click, you can go in. It's also one of the reasons why they get in a lot of trouble, because it's so easy, people can take advantage of it. And so there are some security things that you can use, like waiting rooms, to make it a little bit more secure. And so to have a healthy and sustainable online group, you need to encourage your small group leaders to have a home base and a meeting space. Home base is going to be where you're meeting when the group isn't happening, and that's going to be really important for dynamics and strengthening the group. And then a meeting space. And again, they don't have to be the same thing. You can have a Facebook group or a text thread, and then you can choose to meet on Zoom or Skype or whatever platform you want. And both of those are really important. So think about your programming, your platform, your process, and think about your places, which is really important to have healthy and sustainable online groups. And so right now, what I want you to do is, I would love to hear your feedback. What are your preferred home-based platforms or your preferred meeting space platforms? Leave that in the comments below. Session 3, what a typical online group looks like. I now want to actually get into the details. What does a normal online group look like from start to end? Typically, an online group will be about an hour long. Again, because online groups tend to jump right to discussion, they're focused, and you can actually get more done, and there's not as many distractions because you're not watching something or having to read something. But a normal online group, they start with a welcome. And again, the more you prepare for your online group, the better this will go. What you'll find too, and I'll just be honest with you, is that people are late to online groups, just like they're late to a normal small group. People will not plan, and they'll have to click, and there'll have to be something they have to upgrade on their computer, or their internet will go down right before, or their kids will spill coffee on a keyboard, which I don't even know if keyboards are still a thing. But literally, they'll just give time up front for the online group for people to log on and get ready. Everybody needs a little bit of a buffering time to kind of get set. And so welcoming everybody and just hanging out for a few minutes is really important with your online group. Give people time to kind of get on. And you don't want people logging on. And, because it's online, you're going to get all these eyes, and you don't want the pressure to feel like they were late. You want to provide some space. The next is a warm-up time. So after you welcome everybody and everyone's on and you're ready to start, there actually will be a warm-up time. And what's key about this is you're getting everybody to feel comfortable on the call, especially on a Zoom call. Zoom calls, I even with as much time people are spending on video calls right now, they're awkward and they can be difficult. And so what you want is people to sit back and relax and not feel like they have to be on. You want them to feel natural. Again, the more that they are at a calm state, the more that they're going to be willing to be open and share what's going on. Again, what's key about online groups isn't about the information. It's not getting through the kind of all the checkpoints. It's transformation, which starts with people feeling comfortable. And usually that takes a couple meetings until they can actually start to open up. What I found with warm-ups that's really helpful with online groups is icebreaker questions. And so this is like asking hey, what's the last thing you watched this week? Or what's something new? What's the weirdest thing you've eaten? You can even play games. You can do different stuff like play. There's something called Kahoot. If you go to Kahoot.com, you can actually play games online together. We found something that's been really cool that I've done with a lot of different Zoom meetings. Is Zoom has a whiteboard function where you can actually play Pictionary, where you actually message people a word. They share their screen, and there's a whiteboard function, and people can draw with their mouse pad or whatever, and they're not the best drawings, but it's what you'll find is people will start to loosen up. And so after doing a welcome, provide at least 5 to 10 minutes of warm up where people are at least relaxing. Again, they're jumping in from whatever craziness is happening in their home or their workday, which right now, and for a lot of people moving forward, home is going to be work too. And so either their kids were fighting or something was going on, or they just took out the trash and they saw a mess, and they're jumping into your online group. And so what's key is to have some transition time. And a warm-up time, having some fun together, icebreaker questions is really important to have a good online group time. The next is optional. You will choose to either skip this or invest some time in this. And this is the study. Again, if if you are asynchronized, or if people watched it on demand individually, you'll skip this part. But if your church or your small group wants to watch it together, which is okay, you would actually watch the study together on the Zoom call. Again, this is all going to be dependent on the curriculum your churches use. What is important, just be ready. If you're watching the study together on the Zoom call, watching video on like a video call can be problematic. Test it prior to your online group kind of time. Zoom has a funny thing where you actually have to check a box to share your audio. So stuff like that, where you might be watching it and you think it's working, but nobody can hear it. Be comfortable with some of those features if you're going to watch it together. And then make sure you have a good internet connection. What's really important is, and no matter how great Wi-Fi gets, if you're going to be sharing your video, try to get a hardline connection. It's going to make it a little bit better. But this is why sometimes if you've ever been on a video meeting and someone shares a video and it's like really choppy, and there's a lot of technical reasons why that's happening, but just make sure that's not happening with your group. And so if you're going to watch it together, figure that out. And so, but again, like I told you, most people are going to go straight from warm up. They're going to go right to discussion, because most online groups are going to watch things prior to meeting. And so the next part is discussion time. And again, the key here is you want everybody talking. You want everybody engaged. And so all the same things of, the things leading a good small group that you learned in the Align course from Steve Gladen, is that you need everybody going. And so if somebody is not talking, get them to unmute themselves, get them to talk, and call them out in a very nice, friendly way, but you want everybody going. I found with online groups, when people watch things ahead of time and they've seen the discussion questions ahead of time, it gives them more time to process their thoughts. And so somebody like me, I'm very vocal. I share my opinions probably way too much. It's easy for me to talk, but not everybody's me, and not everybody in your group is you. And so you got to understand that with a lot of online groups, I found that there's better discussion because, introverts, extroverts, everybody has time to process their thoughts. So it leads to a better discussion. And then also, the better you are with the technology, meaning the more frequent you meet and people get comfortable with whatever video tool or whatever platform you're using to meet, technology will get out of the way and it will lead to better times. Again, it's going to take 2 to 3 online group meetings for it to be very successful and feel like it makes sense. And so you're going to welcome, spend a few minutes doing that. You're going to have a warm-up time. Again, it's having fun together, getting people comfortable with muting themselves. Some groups might watch the study together. Most are going to skip right to discussion time. And then they're going to have prayer requests. And this is where, and I'm going to encourage you, is to have somebody else in your group take this. Like if you're the host, or if you're the leader, or if you're teaching this to your church, encourage people to share ownership in your group. It's really important to have a good group dynamic. This is especially true with online groups, because again, if one person's leading the group, you're not as invested. But if you have somebody else maybe doing the icebreaker, kind of the warm-up fun time, somebody else doing the prayer request, somebody else doing the prayer at the end, again, they're going to be more invested. You're going to pay attention more. I don't know if you've ever been on a video meeting and you didn't have anything to do with the meeting. You were just invited because you were invited. What do? You tend to multitask. You do other things. But if you have a role in the meeting, you pay attention more. So this is really important with online groups. So everybody shares prayer requests. Again, what's important about this is that you're going to translate this for whatever small groups mean for your church, but this is a general outline. For us, we like to spend some time on the end, 15, 20 minutes, people going around and sharing prayer requests. And again, the idea here is that it's about them sharing what's going on in the world and you praying together. And so somebody will write down those prayer requests, and then they'll actually document that and again, share it in their home-based platform. So they'll post in the Facebook group or in the text message thread, hey, here's everybody's prayer request, so we can keep going. And then groups end with prayer. And then we try to have different people share, different responsibilities. So whoever, opened, maybe if you didn't share at the end, you end in prayer. And by having everybody engage, it makes it a very natural experience, and it makes it a good experience. And so a typical online group is a welcome, it's a warm-up time, they might watch the study together, there's discussion time, which again, 45 minutes, most of the group time is actually going to be discussion with online groups, end with some prayer requests, and then end with prayer. And so that's what a typical online group looks like from start to end, 1 hour. We're not, again, we allow groups to meet shorter and longer, but that's what a normal online group looks like. And so right now, what I want you to do in the discussion area right below this, I want you to share what are some warm-up or icebreaker questions you can think of off the top of your head. Let's learn together. Session 4, expressing all 5 purposes in your online group. And I want to give you a couple ideas. This is not an exhaustive list, but you need to start to think through, how does your online group ministry and your host and your members express all 5 biblical purposes taken from the Great Commission and the Great Commandment? And so this is really important. And so you do want your online groups to have all the purposes happening. Now, it doesn't mean this has to happen every week. Again, we don't want our groups having to express all 5 purposes in every 1-hour meeting. That would be schizophrenic if that was true. We want them to be, the goal here is that over a course of 6 months, you are expressing these various things. And so here are just a few ideas that we've experienced by doing online groups for as many years as we have, that maybe you can take and encourage your groups to do it. And so the first purpose is worship. How do you actually have your online groups express the biblical purpose of worship? A couple ideas. First is actually a lot of groups, what they'll do is that they'll find a song on, like a worship song from their favorite band on YouTube, and they'll actually share their screen on a Zoom meeting and they'll sing it together. Again, you can choose to have, groups can choose to have everybody unmuted or not, but it's actually a very powerful experience. I've done this a couple times with leaders, and it's amazing, as a leader, by having, people together in different places, around the country, around the world, and you see them singing and you're singing together. And it's a very powerful thing. But if they want to do that in their group, they can do that. They just find a song, and then hit share your screen feature, and they sing together. It's very powerful. You can also have somebody, if somebody knows how to sing or play guitar or whatever, they can sing for sure. But again, most of our groups don't have that, and so they'll just use YouTube and they'll sing together. So that's one idea. Another idea to kind of facilitate worship is to actually create like a My Small Group playlist on Spotify or whatever music service you want. You can actually do this on YouTube playlists as well. You can create a playlist and members will add their favorite songs. And the idea is that they're creating a worship playlist that they can listen to during the week, like maybe when they're working out or doing chores around the house or maybe on their morning commute. But the idea is that create something together. Go, oh, this is my favorite song, or this is my favorite song for this reason. I have a song that was really important to me that's kind of a silly song. It was actually by a band called Reliant K. But I remember it was one of they did this song. It was a worship song, and it was really important to where I was on my journey with Christ. And so that's a song I would share with my group, and they would also learn a lot about me. Why do I love that song? But create a playlist together, and so you can add different songs, and maybe even learn why they like those songs. The other thing you can do to kind of facilitate worship is actually pick a time weekly as an online group to watch the service together. What you'll find is that if you never make a commitment to watch a service together, you probably never really have a reason to watch it. And so by picking a specific time, increases the likelihood you're actually going to watch it. And so what happens is that they'll jump on a Zoom call, and instead of watching it privately on their own time, they'll actually jump on a Zoom call and actually watch it together as an online group. And I've heard so many amazing stories of groups, some groups where they have members from all around the world. They'll stay up late or they'll get up early and they'll watch the service together in different locations. I remember this was the thing early on. I think they actually ended up removing it, but they had something on Xbox Live. I remember on Xbox 360, you could actually watch Netflix together and you can have your characters together. And it was silly because it's like the avatars. But what's powerful now is that you can do this on a Zoom meeting. You can all jump on a call together and watch the weekly worship service together. The other idea is that I would encourage you as a church, create a Google Doc or somewhere on your website where you can list out different books that you can read, small group studies, or online resources that could be helpful to facilitate worship. And so obviously you can recommend small group material on the purpose of worship, or maybe there's a book you really like, or maybe there's a tool you use. I know our church has this Journey with Jesus tool where you can actually do a 360 immersive journey. So that's one thing we would recommend. But create somewhere where your hosts, your online groups can go to and kind of dive deeper into the various topics. And you as a staff can just continually update that. The next purpose is the purpose of fellowship. How do you facilitate the purpose of connecting with other people on an online group setting? One idea is to spend more time having fun together on a Zoom call. And so I think this, again, you're going to do this in your icebreaker warm-up section, but spend extended amounts of time. It might be having a game night. It might be, watching a movie over a Zoom call, something that allows for you to connect on a deeper level. Again, the focus of groups isn't just about getting through the information, it's transformation, but that starts with having fun together. And so spend time having fun on your calls together. And so spend, maybe you can maybe you have one, online small group dedicated to this whole thing, or you can have an extra time together. Maybe you plan something, separate. I did this with one of my online groups years ago where we played Family Feud. There's actually some tools online. I think we found it. You can download, if you go to Etsy, you can download PowerPoint and Keynote templates to play Family Feud. And there's tons of these resources that exist, but we actually had fun together and had a Family Feud type of, I think we called it like a small group feud type of meeting time. But it's very powerful to better connect and have better community and fellowship together. The other thing is, playing games actually during your Zoom call. We talked about this earlier through playing Pictionary by using the share your screen whiteboard feature. You can do all sorts of games. A very popular thing right now is to like somebody will pick items, and what you'll say is that whoever can find these items the quickest in your home. So you'll say, hey, everybody, who can find a toothbrush, and everybody will rush around. But again, it's about having fun together, getting people comfortable with unmuting, and really you want them to jump on a Zoom call and feel natural. You don't want it to feel virtual and separate. You want it to be very seamless so that they can, again, open up more naturally. And then the other thing you can do is create like a Facebook group where people can interact during the week. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize about online groups is that you want to create spaces where people can interact peer-to-peer, meaning one another. So if you, the host, is the only one that starts and stops the meeting, that means is that you are the one that controls how they meet. It's in a way you're controlling that they only can connect during this 1 hour. But if you have a Facebook group, again, that can be on a WhatsApp group, it could be on various platforms that exist, is that you allow a space for people to go and connect with each other without you having to be the one that facilitates it. So Facebook groups are very, very powerful. The other thing I wanted to share, a great other way to facilitate fellowship, I want to really encourage you on is to share communion online together. And I know your church might have a different theological, interpretation on what you want to do online. That's okay. But if you are open to the idea of doing communion online, it's a very powerful way to facilitate fellowship. And I've been part of online communion moments in small groups and large groups. And all you do is you just tell them, okay, everybody, buy this cracker or this juice prior to meeting. When we jump on the call, we lead it together. And we actually have a resource where we actually help our small group leaders to lead their group through communion, or they can watch something and we'll lead them through it. But having communion online together is a very powerful way. Again, it's not just discussion. It's a time where you can play music from YouTube. You can then lead through this, and it's a connecting. Again, you want more time to connect. And then I would encourage you to set up a Google Doc or some kind of place on your website where people can kind of dive deeper into, if they want to read a book or a small group study, or if you have a great resource to facilitate the purpose of fellowship online, have that tool where they can go to kind of dive deeper. The next purpose is discipleship. How do people grow in maturity, deeper in their walk online? A couple of things that I have found with online groups that are very powerful is to go through a reading plan together on the YouVersion Bible app. It's a very powerful thing. There's hundreds, probably thousands of reading plans, but go, hey guys, we're going to read through the book of Proverbs. And actually on the YouVersion Bible app, they have a new community feature where you can actually all be going through a plan together, and you can know if people have read or not read, which can get, if you're a little, you can get a little controlling. You don't want to shame people with it, but it's a very powerful way where you can, guys, let's read this together. And then we'll learn together, and you can see where people are at. One of my favorite features on the YouVersion app is the streak feature. And what it does, it actually tells you how many days you've read in a row. And so one of the things you can say, how big is your streak, or how small is your streak? And you can say like, oh, I've been on this streak for 30 days. I had a streak like a year ago where I was at like 550 days, and I actually happened to get on a plane, and I left my time zone. And I totally forgot about it. So when I land, my streak of 500 days ended. I was so mad. And so now I'm restarting it. But by talking with your online group, by reading some together and talking about your streaks through the YouVersion app, it's a way to facilitate the biblical purpose of discipleship. Another way is by spending time in an online group, identifying accountability partners. And this is where, you go to a big church or you're part of a service. That's great. But also in a small group, that's great. Where you're becoming more intimate and you're sharing life. But you also need one-on-one connections. I think about this where Jesus had, he had the masses, he also had the 12, and he had his inner three. And so you need one other person where you can share a little bit more with. And so this is the idea: spend time and go, hey guys, let's identify accountability partners within our group. Depending on the size of your group, people might want certain people. that can become a little awkward, but encourage people to be not just meeting when you're meeting with your small group, but you're also meeting separately. And so there's things that you might not be able to share in a group of 8 or so, but maybe you'll share with somebody individually. With my marriage group that I'm part of, there are things that I'm not going to share because I have, different, genders are part of our group. And so I might just share with one of my friends, one of my guy friends, one-on-one. And so spend time identifying accountability groups and encourage those groups to meet outside of that. The other thing you might do is actually memorize a verse together. So pick a verse, maybe it's from the study you're going through at that moment, and go, guys, let's all memorize this verse this week or this month. And that's a way to encourage discipleship. Again, memorizing verses is a very important spiritual discipline. It's something that I wish I was better at. And so I have to I have to revisit this regularly about, let's memorize something together. But if you're all memorizing that together, it's a great tool and way to facilitate discipleship. And then you would post in your home-based conversation, hey guys, don't forget, we're memorizing, 2 Timothy 4:7 this week. Hey, we're going to go through it. And then when you get on their Zoom call, people can practice reciting. Again, don't shame people if they mess up. Again, it's about creating a lasting habit of memorizing. It's not about just memorizing that verse. So you want people to feel comfortable with trying and failing. And you're just encouraging them to kind of get going. And then again, set up a page on your site or a Google Doc where they can look at different books and small group studies on the purpose of discipleship. Again, there are a lot of amazing tools. I would highlight different podcasts on this topic. Maybe there's another video course that you recommend at your church. And I would continually update that. Again, have a space where people can dive deeper into these and how to get better at fellowship and discipleship and worship. And so that's really important. Have somewhere where people can dive deeper in some of these areas. The next purpose is the purpose of ministry. This is actually a really cool one because once you get people serving and engaging in different ways, I found that it actually starts to become their church and their group. So it's really important that you mobilize people in this way. One way to do this is spend a group time, one of your online group times, actually having people share their experience serving with your church. And so by just having, it's almost like an expo in your group where they're highlighting, this is my experience sharing in our church, serving in our church. And while they're sharing, people get to see the different ministries that your church offers. And it starts to demystify the experience of actually serving. Because depending on how they were raised or their background, they might not think that they can serve. They might not think that they are good enough to serve. And so you need to provide a space where they actually know that they can. And if everybody shares in the group, this is a great way to kind of expose what's possible. And they can share how they got engaged. I found one of the biggest ways that people find out about, different ministry opportunities, that they just find out who's the leader of it. And so I bet your church has something once a year where you do this, you highlight this, or you have something on your website. But if they know, if they want to get involved, let's say in the greeters ministry, and they know this person in their group is part of the greeters ministry and they just heard it and they had the contact, they're more likely to get engaged. And so spend a group time, highlighting the different ministries that people serve and have them share their experience. Another thing you can do is you can actually spend time actually serving together. And so, and what I mean by that is you can actually decide on a project in your community that you want to do. And so with online groups, this is going to be looking a little different. And so one of the things that if everybody lives local, like if everybody in the online group lives within like a 30-mile radius, you would identify a way you want to serve in your community, and then you would actually do it. You would pick a date and you would go. If everybody's decentralized, meaning everybody's out of state or spread out, what you would say is you go, guys, we want to serve our community this way. So it might be like food. we want to serve in a food pantry, or we want to somehow impact that need in our community. And what an online group will do is that they will actually allow each member of the group do that however that makes sense for their community. So if there's a food pantry from a local ministry, or maybe the city or the county, they'll allow them to serve there. If they don't have that in their area, they'll just pack a sack lunch and they'll give it to people who need food in their area. But the key here is that just because people are spread out, that doesn't mean you get to ignore the idea of serving. You still need to serve. With an online group, it's just going to look a little different if people are spread out. So people can serve locally in their area that way, or they can choose to serve by actually picking a project and decentralizing it. And then what happens is when they get back together, everybody shares that experience. We had an online group do this a while back where they wanted to pack sack lunches, and they did it. They had 6 members of their online group spread out around the world, actually, and they each packed the lunches on their own, and then they gave it out on their own, and when they came back together, they talked about it. And that was the way their online group did ministry, and they empowered people to serve that way. It's a very powerful way to kind of encourage people to serve. And then, again, set up a page, somewhere where people can dive deeper into ministry, look at books and small group studies and different resources that exist. The last purpose is the purpose of evangelism. And there's some really cool ways you can facilitate this online because of just the way the digital tool exists. But one of the easiest ways is to actually have each small group member share 2 people that they are praying for to come to Christ. And then regularly keep up to date with what's going on. And so this might be at the end of a group time. It might be a whole dedicated time on evangelism. You go, hey guys, who are 2 people you're actively praying to come to Christ in your world? It might be at your work or in your family or a neighbor. And just so, okay, I'm praying for Sally and I'm praying for Jerry. And the idea is that you regularly update. Our group does this. And what we'll do is usually once a month, we'll go, hey, what's going on with that person we were praying for? And we just keep that going. Again, in your home base, you can keep those names going, but just spend time in your online group praying for that. It's really important, to keep that evangelistic mindset kind of going in your group. And by having those 2 names and revisiting those names, every month, it's very helpful to kind of keep that going and that focus in your group. The other thing is dedicate an entire group time for people to practice sharing their testimony. And so what I found is that this is very powerful, that when people actually know how to share their story under 5 minutes, when they're put into a scenario where they can share their faith, they know how to do it. You don't want the first time when they have to share their faith to be the first time they have to share their faith. You want them to have some reps in it. So dedicate an entire online group time to actually sharing your story. And so there's 3 phases to actually sharing your testimony. And the first one is, what was my life like before Christ? The second is, how did I come to know Christ? And the third is, what is your life like after putting your faith in Christ? And so if you just answer those 3 questions under 5 minutes, it can be very powerful. And when you have the opportunity to witness or share your faith to a neighbor or coworker, you're ready to do it and you feel comfortable. But do it on a group time together, an online group time together. Have each person share their story and let them practice it and provide some constructive feedback to what they're sharing. And so what I found is when people share their story, sometimes you don't know it because you live it, but people will highlight, wow, that's really powerful. Like, I didn't know this about you. And it's a moment to connect and build that way, but it also allows you to feel comfortable and ready to share your faith when God puts you in those moments. And then the last thing is to have each member of your online group to host a secondary group during maybe your church does a campaign or some kind of study. And the idea is that your online group will meet regularly, but let's say you're going to do this special study and encourage everybody in the online group to host something at their workplace or in their community, or maybe it's with family. My own small group, we did this a while ago where my family, we had some struggles in our family with some alcoholism, and our church does this study on life-healing choices, and I decided with my wife to host a secondary group for the purpose of outreach to our family. And so it wasn't going to be our primary group, but your online group can choose to host a secondary group for people in their community for outreach purposes. And so maybe that can be a second online group or it can be an in-person group, but consider doing something that's short, kind of a short span. It's only for 6 weeks, and then you can raise somebody in that group to kind of continue that. But encourage people to do a secondary group is a very powerful way to facilitate evangelism culture. And then I would just encourage you again to have some kind of Google Doc or a site where you can list out books and small group studies and different resources that can dive deeper into the purpose of evangelism. And so what I would love now, I would love to hear, what are your ideas? So like in the discussion right below, what are some ideas that your online group can do to express the purpose of fellowship and ministry? What are some ideas? Maybe you're like, Jay, you totally didn't talk about this. Share that below. I would love to read those ideas and us to learn together. Session 5, a copy and paste way to launch online groups at your church. Now, this is an idea that I want to encourage you to use so that you can launch online groups effectively at your church and keep them going afterwards as well. The idea is that you need to model this and teach what online groups means by actually inviting people to be part of it. And I found one of the best ways to do this is to invite, 10 to 25 key leaders, part of your church, to be part of an online group that you lead. And you do it for 3 weeks. You just say, hey guys, I really want to launch online groups. Let's do this together. So you invite those key people, 10 to 25 people, to be part of it. You just meet for 3 weeks. You create a home base by creating like a Facebook group, for example, where you meet while you're not actually in your meeting time. You meet weekly, on a platform like Zoom and for your meeting space. And you actually pick a study, pick something simple. It could be a small group material. It could be, you could even just read through, a book like Titus or Timothy or something simple. And then use the Zoom breakout feature. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Zoom breakout feature is very powerful. It's something you have to enable prior to your meeting time, but you actually can meet together with 25 people. You hit this breakout tool and you could subgroup into groups of 3 to 5. And the idea is that you would start large together. So you would start with 25 people, and then you would have your welcome, your warm up, and then, probably people will watch everything prior. And when you jump to discussion, you go, hey, for our discussion time, we're going to break out into groups of 3 to 4. And you hit that Zoom breakout feature. Really, the Small Group Network does have a tutorial, which will provide a link for that where you can watch and actually see how to do this. And then you would spend 30 minutes or 40 minutes in your groups of 3 to 4 with the discussion questions. And then you would end the breakout time and you would end all together. You bring everybody together. And then at the end of the 3rd week, you would say, hey guys, we've done an online group. And what's really important about this, and this is why it's a copy and paste strategy, is that now everybody in your group understands online groups. It's not just like a cognitive thing or like a theoretical thing. They've actually experienced it. And I think a lot of people miss this, is that when you're trying to explain the power of an online group, they might think about, a work meeting or how they don't like Zoom. But when you actually do it yourself, and you bring your key leaders, now you have 10 to 25 people that can launch online groups afterwards. They can spin off and do their own online groups and tell that story. Tell the story what you experience. I bet if you do this with your key leaders, you're going to experience like some things. You're going to go, wow, I didn't realize how great online groups can go. And then tell a story about somebody in your group that launched a group out of that, and use that energy to launch online groups out of that. And that's a very simple way for you to launch groups. Do it yourself with some key leaders, and then out of that, you can launch 10 to 25 online groups right from that group just after 3 weeks. And so right now, what I would love for you to do is in the comment section below, I would love for you to share how many people are going to be part of your first online group at your church. And then what are you going to study for 3 weeks? Okay, so comment that right below right now. Well, there you have it. You've completed the course on how to start and have sustaining online groups at your church. What I want to just real quick review. We've talked about why online groups are valuable to your church. You can reach different people. It's a front door. It's a companion experience for people that are members of your church. It's a great way to launch new face-to-face groups out of online groups. We talked about strategy. These are the 4 Ps of thinking through the places, the process, the platforms. These are really important to have a good online group strategy. We walked through a typical online group, how it's under an hour. There's a welcome, there's a warm-up time, there's, people watch things prior to meeting together, most of them. And then when they meet, they actually only do discussion. And then there's prayer requests and a close. We talked about the different ways to express all 5 purposes online, and how really got, this is how you can do fellowship, this is how you can do worship. And we gave you a bunch of examples. And then we just ended with a copy and paste strategy for you to launch online groups at your church by inviting some key leaders, and for you doing it 3 weeks with them. And then out of that, you can launch a bunch of online groups. It's a multiplication strategy. So do it yourself. And then when you talk about it, it's not you just talking about it hypothetically. You actually have done it and you've launched a bunch. And then all those groups, you can plug people into those groups that you start out of that 3-week copy and paste strategy. And so what I want to do now is I want to pray. I want to pray for your online group ministry that's either getting started or maybe you're taking it to level 2.0. So let's pray together. God, I just want to thank you so much for this leader or this team that has gone through this training. They want to reach people. But they don't want to just reach people, but they want to have a healthy online community. And they want to do it well by honoring their local church, but also honoring the call that you put on their life. I want to pray, God, as they launch online groups at their church, or they take their online group strategy to the next level. I pray, God, you give them vision, you give them clarity, you give them leaders to do this, and people step up. I pray that technology doesn't get in the way of their group time. I pray that, internet and, computers crashing, they don't have any of those, that it's seamless, and that the launch phase or the upgrade phase is seamless, and that, God, you give them a story of why this is important to the church in the first 3 weeks. That's what I'm praying for, God, that they see the fruit of their labor. Sometimes we don't always get to see that from our perspective, but I'm praying that they see that. God, I thank you so much for their faithfulness and their interest in learning more about this, and I'm praying for a successful launch or relaunch of online groups at their church. And I pray this in Jesus' name, amen. I want to say congratulations on completing this course. I'm so excited that you went through it, and we are praying for how God uses this. And there's a couple links down below in the description. I would love for you to kind of continue to learn and click on those different things to learn about how to grow your online ministry and your online group offering. And the last question I have for you is that I would love for you to comment right below your church name and when you plan on launching your online small group ministry, because I know I would love to be praying for you by name, and also we would love to be praying for each other. So check that out right now. Again, congratulations.